huge illuminated 666 in red.
Yeah.
And I went from that to that to that, and he started smiling.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh no, Chris Walken is the Antichrist, you know? Human sacrifice.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that.
Kinda.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
We just dress it up.
Yep.
When you find out medications are killing people and they keep prescribing them.
I'd like to think what the general here is doing, he's no small part of this, because the problem here is many, many faceted. And for he and his sister Mary for exposing all these wolves in sheep's clothing that prey upon our young. I mean, I got 9 kids. I don't know, if one of them got stolen or trafficked or something, I'd have to kill someone.
Mel Gibson revealed Hollywood didn't blacklist him for being offensive. They did it because he made a movie about Jesus. And now, 20 years later, it turns out Kanye might have been right all along. Behind the scenes, Gibson says he was punished for exposing something the industry didn't want the world to see. It all started in 2004 when Mel dropped what would become one of the most successful, talked about, and divisive religious films of all time, The Passion of the Christ, a self-funded ultra-Christian epic that pulled no punches in its depiction of Jesus' final hours.
So everything was going well, so you decided you needed to do a story about the Christ.
Yeah.
Because now, was that a calling, would you say, or was that another challenge?
It was just something that got into my head about that. I just kept having visions about it, you know, and about, you know, what was that like 12 hours like? And what was that really like? I mean, what does it mean to get scourged and crucified? And the significance of what one single event and what one God-man has done historically.
The movie was violent, it was raw, it was unapologetically spiritual, and the industry hated it. Critics accused it of anti-Semitism. Many labeled Mel a fanatic, and some even said it was dangerous. But here's the thing. It made over $600 million at the box office. No studio backed it, no awards showered it, and yet the people showed up in droves. Now, let's be real. Hollywood usually rewards rule breakers, especially ones who bring in that kind of cash. But not Mel. Instead of getting applauded, he got ghosted.
American even, you know, my rights were violated in every way you can imagine, and no one seemed to give a shit, which really bothered me, because it was a real pig pile. But I did harbor some anger about all that, which I've let go, because one must. But it was, and no one would distribute it.
Right.
No one.
You don't get punished for failing in Hollywood. You get punished for stepping out of line. And The Passion stepped way out. This wasn't just a movie about Jesus. This was a movie made by someone who actually believed in Jesus. And that, apparently, was the real problem. Fast forward to Mel's interview with Joe Rogan, where he lays it all bare. He straight up says Hollywood resisted the film not because it was violent or controversial, but because it was about Jesus.
There was a lot of opposition to it. And I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going, because
Of course.
it's big subject matter, and it's like, you know, and my contention is, you know, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, you know, and I believe that. You know.
He wasn't dabbling in religion for clout or aesthetic. He was living it.
Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah.
Christianity is the one religion where people, all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, you know, whatever it represents, colonialism. You know, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap, and people do feel free to beat up on it.
Mel goes on to describe how this movie wasn't just an artistic statement. It was a spiritual mission. He truly believed the story needed to be told in the rawest, most honest way possible. And Hollywood, it freaked out because it exposed something bigger. How uncomfortable the industry gets when someone actually believes in what they're preaching.
Sure, it's gotten a bad rap, and people do feel free to beat up on it. Even I do when I see it's like, you know, when it's not fair, or when I
Right.
think it's off. you
Right.
know. Like, you know, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, you know, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean,
Or the Pope.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Oh, not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but like,
Yeah.
so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well,
But that's not all. After The Passion, Mel went from beloved Hollywood icon to persona non grata almost overnight. And on the surface, sure, there were other reasons. The 2006 DUI arrest, where he made horrifying anti-Semitic remarks. The 2010 phone calls with racist and abusive language toward his ex.
I don't walk around in tight clothes. I stay at home for most of the time.
Public, and it's a embarrassment to me. You look like a honey, and if you get raped by a pack, it's your fault. All right? Because you provoked it. You are provocatively dressed all the time with your fake boobs. You feel you have to show off in tight outfits and tight pants and stuff. You see your from behind.
The accusations of domestic violence. On paper, it looks like a man who spiraled, and the industry had no choice but to cut him off. But here's the twist. Hollywood has always had a funny way of picking and choosing who gets canceled. Roman Polanski drugged and assaulted a minor, and still has Oscars. Woody Allen's films still hit festivals. Ezra Miller literally went on a global crime spree and still has a blockbuster movie out, so why was Mel erased harder than most? Let's zoom out. Mel was raised in a hyper-traditional Catholic household. His father was a Holocaust denier. He grew up with extreme religious ideology. Mix that with a lifelong battle with alcoholism, mental instability, and rage issues, and you've got a walking contradiction, a man of deep faith and deep flaws.
it was a redemption. So, you know, and I believe that. You know, I actually am, you know, I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, you know. So I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor,
But flaws don't get you banned. Flaws are Hollywood currency. What gets you banned is telling the truth the system doesn't want aired. And Mel told it. On Rogan, he said he believes the Gospels are history, that the resurrection happened, that the apostles all died for a truth they refused to deny. He broke down in front of millions explaining how his faith, not rehab or therapy, is what got him off drugs and alcohol. But to make things worse, Mel didn't stop at faith. He started exposing Hollywood itself. He called the town out for its cult-like energy, its obsession with power games, its tendency to sacrifice people.
yeah, it's a mess. But the human sacrifice aspect is alive and well in our society, I think.
It really is. It's just dressed up in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, rhetoric around it. But they've always been able to justify it. Like in Apocalypto, it was like, yeah, so the crops will be better. Hey, we'll just, you know.
Yeah, kill a few people.
Yeah.
And then there was that infamous 1998 interview. At first, he's just casually talking about how he got into acting, like how he was either going to go into physical labor or try journalism. But he ended up choosing drama school because he was really good at lying. But not in a villain way. It was more like this.
Passed, really hated school. And I could have gone into journalism, or the other option that was open to me was a sort of auditioning for a drama school.
Right.
Which I did. I could tell jokes and stories and make stories up and convince people of things that weren't true.
You were a liar.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
A great liar.
But that little moment, that was the first red flag. Because what Mel was really pointing to was how Hollywood rewards deception. Like, the better you are at faking things, the more they celebrate you. Then he went in on the casting process. He called it gross, prostitution-like, and straight up dehumanizing, especially for women.
Well, it seems like you're doing something terribly wrong. You feel like some kind of a, you know, I mean, you feel as if you're committing a crime.
Yeah.
And it's kind of slimy. It's kind of prostitution.
Sure.
But that, I think, is even beyond. It's just kind of watching someone go through the act of prostituting themselves. It's there's something very almost unbearable about it.
He said actors are expected to walk into a room of strangers, fake emotions on command, look good, and perform like it's a meat market. And then came the spooky part. He tells this weird kind of creepy story about meeting Christopher Walken for a project. The vibes were off from the start.
He came to see me on a rooftop in New York. I said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And he said, "Sure." And he floated in sideways through a crowd of people. He was wearing black. And it was like one of those old vampire movies where they don't walk, but they glide. And he was a dancer, you know, so he has he's very, you know, graceful.
Yeah.
And he moved sideways, and he just sat down in a chair next to me. And it kind of frightened me.
Walken glided across the room like a vampire, didn't read the script, started talking about torture unprompted. And by the end of the meeting, Mel looked up and saw the creepiest thing.
And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him.
Yeah.
And he was getting scary.
Yeah.
And then I turned around, and it was on top of the Peninsula Hotel. I turned around to avoid his steady gaze at one point.
Yeah.
And I was looking at a building with the top of the sixes on it. So there was a huge illuminated triple six in red.
Yeah.
And I went from that to that to that, and he started smiling. And I thought, oh no, Chris Walken is the Antichrist, you know?
This wasn't just Mel being dramatic. Then he shared what a powerful producer once told him.
There's a producer I know, successful producer, I will not mention names, but his whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better. And it's like, whoa, ooh. The man has got a spiritual malady for a start. I mean,
He also talked about the social contract in Hollywood.
the social contract. You can't get mad. You can't get mad. You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be fucked over at some point by people who you may have done something nice for.
But then he said the thing that ties the whole interview together. When he first got to Hollywood, it felt like a horror movie.
When I came over here, I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on, because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be.
But he was right all along.
And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think,
This is how he described those people.
these little guys, these little heathens with no soul downstairs with horns on their head with a battering ram trying to like beat your walls in.
Yeah.
But that's your own devils, you know?
Yeah.
It's clear Mel wasn't just venting. He was trying to warn people that the industry looks like art on the surface, but underneath, it's a snake pit. In his 20s, at the height of his fame, Mel ditched it all. He bought a farm, grew vegetables, raised cattle, moved completely off the grid, and for a while, he was done with it. Hollywood had overwhelmed him, and he needed to figure out who he was without it. But then came the comeback. In 2016, Mel released Hacksaw Ridge, a gritty, faith-anchored war film that premiered at the Venice Film Festival to a 10-minute standing ovation. 10 years after being blacklisted, he was back, and with 6 Oscar nominations to prove it. But this wasn't just a return to form. This was a resurrection. Since then, Mel's been quietly working. No major studio deals, no Marvel franchise, but he's been writing, directing, and acting in lower-budget passion projects. He even produced The Sound of Freedom, and we know the drama that came with it. The story starts in 2015. That's when the script for Sound of Freedom was first written. The film's based on the real-life missions of Tim Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent who rescued kids from human trafficking. It wrapped filming in 2018, and you'd think a movie about saving children would be an easy sell, right? Nope. It was treated like radioactive waste. The film got passed around from studio to studio, gathering dust for years like an unwanted group project nobody wanted to claim. Originally, 20th Century Fox was supposed to release it, but in 2019, plot twist, Disney acquired Fox, and once Disney had the film, they shelved it. And that's when the conspiracy theories started flying. Because why would Disney, of all corporations, suppress a movie about child trafficking? Fans were already raising eyebrows, but when Mel Gibson stepped in and co-signed the project, yeah, things got even messier. So when Sound of Freedom finally got released, independently without any studio backing, and Mel put his name behind it, that wasn't just support, that was a statement. And the gag? The film ate. It made nearly $100 million worldwide off a $14 million budget. People were lining up to see it, but the mainstream media, instead of celebrating it, they went full damage control mode. CNN, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, they all labeled it conspiracy bait, dismissed it without even breaking down the content. But Mel's never played their game anyway. While the mainstream iced him out, he's still been creating behind the scenes. Now he's been steadily preparing something even bigger. The resurrection of the Christ. Yep, he's not done with Jesus. The sequel to The Passion is reportedly set to begin filming in Italy, and the scope? Massive. The story starts in hell, features the fall of the angels. CGI heavy, spiritually intense, and unapologetically bold. Jim Caviezel is returning as Jesus, and Mel says this isn't just a movie, it's a spiritual war.
There's some crazy stuff. And I think in order to really tell the story properly, you have to start with the fall of the angels. Right?
Yeah.
Which is you're in another place. You're in another realm. You know, you need to go to hell. You need to go to Sheol.
So you're going to have hell, you're going to have Satan, all that?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Sure, you gotta, yeah.
Right.
You gotta have his origin.
How do you depict that?
This is a good question. And I think I have ideas about how to do that. And ideas about how to evoke things and emotions in people from the way you depict it.
As in, the film isn't going to ease people in. It's going to challenge what you believe about the afterlife, sin, salvation, all of it. And if the first film was a fire starter, this one might burn down the whole house. But Mel's not making it for Hollywood. He's making it for the faithful. He's making it for those who feel like outsiders in an industry and culture that doesn't respect their beliefs. And in a weird way, he's also making it for himself. Because here's the thing. Mel never asked to be a symbol. He just wanted to tell stories. But the moment he made a story that the system didn't approve of, the system turned on him. And even now, as he fights his way back, there are still headlines, still pushback, still people who won't forgive him, even if God already has. Winona Ryder recently brought back up an old story from the 90s, claiming Mel called her an oven dodger, an anti-Semitic reference to the Holocaust. Mel denied it and called her a liar, but it reminded everyone just how long his history of problematic behavior really is. Racist rants, homophobic slurs, abusive relationships, all of it paints a complicated, ugly picture. And yet, despite the social media backlash, studios keep inching back toward him. Warner Brothers still has him directing The Wild Bunch. Lionsgate released his film, Force of Nature. And his fan base? Unshaken. So what gives? According to some insiders, Mel's audience isn't the TikTok generation. It's the churchgoers, the old school patriots, the middle America base that doesn't really care what Twitter says. They care about faith, family, and forgiveness. And Mel's banking on that, quite literally. His defenders include Jodie Foster, Whoopi Goldberg, Robert Downey Jr., all Hollywood power players who say he deserves a second chance. But then there are people like Seth Rogen who drag him every chance they get. When Mel was cast as Santa in Fat Man, Rogen tweeted, "Ho ho Holocaust denier." So now the million-dollar question, was Mel Gibson canceled for being messy or for being right? Because let's be honest, the same industry that forgives abusers, cheaters, manipulators, and actual criminals is still squirming over a Jesus movie from 20 years ago. The Passion of the Christ didn't just break records, it broke Hollywood's illusion of control. It proved that audiences would pull up in droves for a film the system didn't co-sign, and it made execs realize something terrifying. They couldn't cancel faith, and that brings us right to Kanye, because let's not act brand new. This man dropped Jesus is King in 2019, a fully gospel album, no cussing, all scripture, performed it in churches, toured it with choirs. And while people joked about it or didn't take it seriously at the time, it was a huge deal. A mainstream rap icon going full Christian, unfiltered, no industry polish, that was rebellion. Just like The Passion, it was a middle finger to the status quo. And just like Mel, Kanye got labeled all the same things. Unstable, unhinged, dangerous, anti-Semitic, and listen, Kanye's had his own public disasters, no one's denying that. But the second he started pulling the curtain back on the industry, saying out loud what people whisper behind closed doors, that's when the doors started slamming shut. So what if The Passion wasn't a controversy, but a warning? What if Mel Gibson didn't get canceled for being offensive but for being right? And what happens if the resurrection of the Christ becomes even bigger? Well, then Hollywood might have to reckon with something scarier than a scandal, a truth they can't control. If you want to see what that kind of spiritual rebellion really looks like, check out our next video, because once you start connecting the dots, the picture gets a whole lot clearer.